Morphological Institute. So the material that I worked on comes from the site Svinorička Čuka. It's located in the South Morava Valley in Serbia on a river terrace marked on the map. The other marked locations are other important Neolithic sites from the area. The excavation is done as part of the Costa Rica research collaboration and the Neolithic project. The site seen on the picture below, on the left is the northern trench, on the right is the southern trench. Exhibits two Starcevo cultural layers, one older phase dating to 5700 to 5600 BC, and the younger one to 5500 BC. In the southern trench, so a potential Starcevo house was resurfaced during excavation. House is important in this context as in that region, most architectural features from the Starcevo culture, the first Neolithic culture from Serbia and surrounding areas, exhibit pit dwellings and pit houses, and a more mobile society, more mobile architecture, and less intensive inhabited sites. So now with measurements of 2.5 to 4.3 meters and multi-seasonal use and detected repair phases, this is a bit out of the ordinary for the region and the area. The house dates to the older Starcevo occupation phase, 5700, 5600 BC. At least 5 floors could be identified individually, as well as an inside and an outside area. From this context, I collected 300, could sample the 374 bone fragments. Those were already identified with zooarchaeology by the morphology before. I didn't get the results. I got the results in the end to compare mine and the morphological results. Highlighted in red are the stratigraphical units from which the bones I had come from. As you can see, they come from different stratigraphical, different occupation phases from different time, and they as well as the inside and the outside area. As the stratigraphical units differ in their occupation phase and their location, it was of interest to delve into more detail into them to see if there are continuities or discontinuities in the faunal assemblage, or differences in an outside area. To get a more detailed look, I conducted zooarchaeology by mass spectrometry. We already had a great introduction to how the method works. The research was done at the Archaeo and Paleoproteomics Working Group, University of Tübingen. After the ammonium bicarbonate protocol did not produce as nice results, the destructive protocol was applied using HCl acid to demineralize the bone samples. Then we talked about it, digested with trypsin, then measured with the Malitov mass spectrometer, and then compared with the reference library. That comes with the usual limitations. For one, I could not differentiate between domesticates and their wild counterparts, which is rather important in the Neolithic setting. And then, of course, sometimes regarding the preservation of the collagen, sometimes the identification was not as precise. So now to the results, what did I find? First, the domesticates, there is a huge spike of bovid bones. This is common with, as soon as ZooMS is applied, the bovid bones have a huge spike. I'll talk about this later on. Then the second biggest group are pigs, so domestic wild pig or domestic pig. Here, other literature and zooarchaeological data from Starcevo sites usually reports that the wild majority is domesticates with an admixture of wild counterparts for all of those species. So I think we can assume the same for this assemblage. Then next are ovis, sheep, and capra, goat, and then the combined group. Here, this especially important, I think, for the ZooMS results, that we can actually differentiate quite well between sheep and goat, while the zooarchaeology over the morphology cannot. This becomes important because, especially in the context of the Starcevo Neolithic, sheep and goat, usually in zooarch literature, are they're in the same group, and they are taken care of as they are the same group. And in the Starcevo Neolithic, they are ovicaprids as one group are the second biggest group after bovid bones, and then pigs are the smallest group of the domesticates, which usually then is interpreted as a sign for a less mobile, less sedentary and more mobile society. But now if we can actually split sheep and goat, we can see that actually pig are the second biggest group, which has an influence on the whole interpretation towards the husbandry strategies. And then again, as I mentioned before, sometimes the collagen preservation was not good enough, so we have the group of either sheep or a cervid. With the cervids, we come to the wild game part of the results. Capriolus, roe deer differs quite significantly in the signature, so I could identify it quite well. I could not differentiate between Cervus elaphus, red deer, and Dama fallow deer. The literature usually only records red deer, but from habitat, range, Dama fallow deer could have been possible, so I did not want to exclude it. Cervidae is either of those three, and then again, sheep or either of those three. Present in 3 fragments was bear, most likely brown bear, as this is recorded for the site. Then European hare was present as 1 fragment, and 2 fragments were canis. I could not tell if it is wolf or dog. Both have been recorded for the site, so here it's a guess. But in the end, as both is present for the site, it's not really important to determine for this fragment. The last part, that is best case, neither wild game nor domesticate, are the human remains present in 3 fragments. The first 2 fragments are cranial elements from the os parietale, and the third is a shaft from most likely a metacarpal. They come from the oldest recovered floor, the stratigraphical unit 120, which is part of the occupation phase near 3 of the site, Svinetjutuka. The layer, not the bones themselves, but the layer is dated to 5600 calibrated BC. During excavation, no signs of any burial were detected, so this is an irregular deposition of bones and not a burial. This is a common finding for the Starcevo culture for reasons currently unknown. After the Mesolithic, where inhumation burials are quite common, they become very, very infrequent, rarely encountered, and if human remains are found, it's mostly scattered, fragmented pieces. Maybe this finding them into this house context can help and aid into getting interpretations for what burial customs can lead to this picture. Now, to combine my ZooMS data and the morphological identification from the total of bones, I could ID 344 bones, most of them to a rather specific level. Over morphology, 44 bones had an ID. From those 44 bones, I can compare my identification and the morphological identification. And for 22 fragments, they were in agreement. In 12 cases, the ZooMS ID was more precise. Most often, that was morphologically, it was determined to be a large mammal, and then I could mostly say it's bovid, or ovicaprid, as mentioned, and I could either say goat or sheep. In 6 cases, there was a disagreement between the 2 identifications, and in 2 cases, I had a fail, and then morphologically, there was an ID. There's quite a difference in the numbers of the ID, but in the end, the morphological data was crucial for the understanding and refining the ZooMS IDs. For the aforementioned domestication problem, only because of the morphological data, I can now at least guesstimate that also for my assemblage, it is true that most are most likely to be domesticates. Then another issue which makes comparing those IDs a bit hard is the fragmentation bias. We saw the huge spike in the bovid bones, common for most ZooMS applications to hold assemblages. Bovid bones, they are big, so they can just splinter into many more pieces, and they have a lot of marrow, so people are likely to intentionally fragment those bones. It is now the question if, due to this fragmentation, the bovid bones are underrepresented in the morphological record, or are they overrepresented in the ZooMS ID record? This is something that needs to be tackled. MNI is not possible in this fragmentation grade, but potentially over weight comparison one can get to a minimum number of individuals and get a better picture of how many bovids were actually present at the site. And this is something I want to apply in the future to this data. So what is the takeaway? ZooMS can definitely enhance the details of the faunal data and discover remains like the human remains that would have not been found otherwise. The differentiation between goat and sheep is very important, and I think is a huge step into refining the ways we can analyze and interpret animal husbandry strategies of the past, because goat and sheep are just different kind of animals. They had different implications of herding and having them. So stop having to treat them as same because we couldn't differentiate them will definitely help in getting a better picture. The morphological and ZooMS ID work together and should work together to get a better picture. And for the site itself, between the layers, there was continuity visible, no significant differences in between the layers. So also this house can now be interpreted way more refined after the ZooMS application. Thank you.